Hello, thanks for joining. Complementary colors are colors that lie opposite of each other on the color wheel. For example, yellow and purple are complementary colors. Cyan and red are complementary colors. And there's something very special about them. There are two main things. The first thing is when you put complementary colors next to each other, they pop off the canvas. The second thing is also very special. If you mix them together, they neutralize each other. Let's dive a little deeper into this matter. You can't get a bigger contrast between colors than when you put complementary colors next to each other. So for purple there isn't a bigger contrasting color than yellow, and the other way around. For yellow there isn't a bigger contrasting color than purple. They're so far away from each other on the color wheel that they have nothing in common. And that's why they contrast so much. Look at this, for example. Now I do something else. I paint some yellow, and here I'll make some orange. That's a far less contrast, and that's because orange lies closely to the yellow on the color wheel. And the same goes in this case for greens. And of course it's easy to explain when you look at the color wheel. The orange colors contain yellow, but the green colors contain yellow as well. So they have a relationship. But when you go further on the color wheel, the contrast with yellow gets bigger every time because it has absolutely nothing in common with yellow. There's no yellow in this part of the color wheel. And the biggest contrasting color is purple for this yellow. You can do this for every color. We can look at green, for example. When you look at green, you have on the opposite side magenta, a member of the red family. So I put on green. And I'll put magenta next to it. Very nice, big contrast. Now, and we know green contains cyan and yellow. And on the opposite of the wheel, we have something like magenta. And magenta is a red. And it doesn't contain yellow and it doesn't contain cyan. So it has little to do with green. That's why it's contrasting so hard. But when you look at a more yellowish green like this, then you see on opposite a color that has a bias a little bit to purple. You see? So then you have a green that contains less blue because the amount of yellow is more, and then the red color contains a little bit of blue as well because it is already a little bit purplish. So when you think of it, when you put complementary colors next to each other, you always look at two colors that complement each other. One color contains what the other color is lacking. So that's how you can look at it. But now we take a look at what happens when you mix the complementary colors. When you mix them, they dull each other. I just want to show. Here you have purple, the complementary color of yellow. Next to each other, they pop out. But what happens if I mix a little bit of yellow through that purple? Let's have a look. Something is happening. The purple color loses its saturation. It gets duller. With dull I don't mean that it's bad or something, it's just another type of color. It's not intense. And we know why, because we're mixing two complementary colors, so we are actually mixing three primary colors. We are mixing yellow, magenta and cyan. That's all it is. It's in a certain balance. Whenever you mix only two primary colors, you get a saturated, vivid secondary color, like this orange, this green. It's mixed of two primaries, then you have a vivid color. But when you mix three primaries, then it's done, then your color gets desaturated. And if you're not familiar with this, please consider watching my first color mixing video about primary colors. The link is in the description. Wait a sec, I want to show you something very important. It may seem dull, but it isn't. It is actually very important. I mix these two together and I get a vivid green, the same as that, nearly. And that is, we all know, because cyan and primary yellow are two primaries. I'm mixing two primaries. So I get a secondary color, and that secondary color is vivid. But now I take another blue. You can buy a lot of blues in the winkel, in the shop. I think, okay, I want to mix green. I have primary yellow and I have ultramarine blue. Now what? What's happening now? Look at that dull color. What's happening here? I mixed two primaries, I thought. In the first example, we mixed primary yellow and cyan. Cyan is a very neutral primary color, so I mixed yellow and cyan. Then you get a bright green. But now I've mixed ultramarine blue, and ultramarine lies somewhere here. Ultramarine is a blue that already has a little bit of magenta in it, of red. So when you mix ultramarine with primary yellow, you're not mixing two primaries, you're mixing three actually. Although you think, oh, it's blue and yellow. No, it's three primary colors, because look at this. I can make ultramarine from cyan and a little bit of that red. Look at this, you see? There you have it. Something like ultramarine. So ultramarine contains red. So this mixture contains three primary colors, and that's why it's dull. So that's very important. If you understand that, color mixing becomes very easy. The thing is, color mixing in itself is not that difficult. The perception of colors, that's what's difficult. Now, okay, here we mixed yellow and ultramarine and we get a dull green. But we can make it more extreme. We don't do ultramarine, we do yellow and purple. Well, then we get this. You see, it's more extreme, you get a very dull color. And watch this, when I add white to it, you can see that it's becoming gray. So the funny thing is, the complementary colors, when mixed in exactly the right balance, then they neutralize each other. And it's good to mention this, by the way. When you look for a complementary color, you can look at the color wheel to get a global ID. But these color wheels, yeah, they're theoretical. Because purple and yellow, of course, are complementary colors. But it's maybe not, this is not a primary yellow, maybe. It looks a bit dull on my paper, on my print, to be precise. And maybe this isn't exactly the right complementary purple as well. So don't stick too much exactly to the colors you see here, but the theory, it's the theory. And the thing is, when you don't use exactly the right complementary colors, then you don't get a gray, but something like a brown, for instance. So look at this. Maybe this purple was good, because when I added yellow, I got a gray. But let's say I have a purple like this. It's purple as well. We say, oh, I have purple, this is the complementary color. Now I go mixing, take some yellow, and I start mixing. And then I think, it's a little bit brown. And you can see it even better when I add a little bit of white. And then you see, oh, what you see, in fact, is that it contains a little bit too much magenta. You can see it now. Then I know that my purple contains too much red, so I have to add more cyan to my purple. Like this. Oh, maybe it's something like this. Now I'll try again. This is how you can experiment with it. And then, what am I doing now? I have to put in yellow, not white. So, I add a bit of yellow. Ah, this looks different. You see what's happening? It is more neutral than what I had, but now have a look. I'll add some white. And then we have a look. Aha! See, this is a very good complementary color, because it's very close to gray. You can adjust just as long as you need or want to, but eventually you get to gray. And that's the thing with all complementary colors. So the funny thing is, when you know that if you have the right, exactly the right complementary color, that you get gray, this way you can fine-tune, because this is theory. You see what a difference it made. This purple or this purple was a big difference in my gray. I want to show you with green as well. I have some green here. You see, the complementary color is magenta. Aha! See, my green becomes dull. I like it. But I've not added enough magenta, so let's add some more. Because it isn't gray. And maybe now I added too much magenta, maybe not. We'll have a look, we'll just make it a little bit lighter so we can see what we are doing. We can do that with white, so I add a little bit of white, like this. Maybe some more, I just wipe my palette knife clean. Look, now you can see I've added magenta to my green. But when you say, okay, it's a little bit on the warm side, I add a little extra of cyan. So I make it a little bit cooler, like this. My initial green, this one that I mixed, I just did something, contained a little too little cyan. And because this is such fun to show, I want also to get another color, Pyrrole Red. And we're gonna experiment. We're just gonna discover what is exactly the complementary color. For me, this Pyrrole Red. And when I look at the color wheel, I think, oh, maybe it's just cyan. Now let's try. It must be something like this. Maybe it needs to be a little more green. Maybe it needs to be a little more purple, that blue. We don't know yet. We just try. Of course, I know I've done it before, but now it's hard to tell. It's a dark color. But I can definitely see that this is a little bit dull, gray. So I add a little bit of white to have a look, and I see it's a little bit cool. So maybe if I add a little bit more of the Pyrrole Red, maybe it gets a little bit warmer. It does, but it's not the way to go. What do we see? It is a little bit to the purple side, you see? So what my blue was lacking was a little bit of yellow. Just try. I do a very little bit of yellow through my color, and that will dull the purplish look that it has. Very small amounts. Don't need more than that. And again, we get a nice neutral gray. It's a very gentle balance, but it's fun to do. And it's fun to try to find that balance. So you can do this for every color. And it's very beneficial to try, because when you paint from life, for instance, most of the time you have to make your colors less saturated. Yes, maybe I'm painting a landscape, and I need a green for the grass, and I mix primary yellow and cyan, and I get a color like this. But this is a way too vivid green. Most of the time you almost never see a green like this in nature. It's way too saturated. So what can I do? Now I've learned that with a complementary color, a little bit of magenta, I can make it duller. And maybe the color also needs a little bit to be a little bit more white, maybe. So I get a very a less vivid color. And maybe it's something like this. Well, you don't know, of course, but or something like this that we had before. But with these complementary colors, you can dull your colors, and then you don't always need exactly the right complementary color, of course, because as you can see here, I've added a little bit of magenta and a little bit of white, and maybe I say, okay, the balance has to, it's dull, but maybe the green that I see in nature has a little bit more yellow in it. Well, I just add a little bit more yellow, but the thing is, I have dulled down my initial green. Thanks for watching. I see you next time. Bye!